So, for the purposes of this video, please state your name and where you're from.
My name is Richard Whittle. I'm from Chatham, Massachusetts, on Cape Cod.
Okay, so how did you get into the Army?
Well, I graduated from high school, and I could either go to college or I could join the service. And I joined the service. I enlisted in the Army with a friend of mine, Phil Cope, also from Weymouth. And on October the 1st, 1946, we took the bus to Quincy. I should talk to that thing. And they took us to Quincy, which was the recruitment center, recruiting office. There were a whole bunch of guys our age there, and put us on a bus. We had to raise our hands, you know, and swear allegiance and all that stuff. Put us on a bus, and they took us out to Fort Banks in Winthrop. That's north of Boston on the water. It was a cold day, as I remember it. And we stayed there overnight. I think we had to sleep with our clothes on, because we just had our clothes that we were wearing. We didn't have any uniforms or anything. And they fed us, gave us a blanket, I think, or something like that. The next day, we went, I believe, by bus to the South Station, and they put us on a train, special train for soldiers, and they took us down to Fort Dix in New Jersey. And we stayed there for some time. It wasn't very interesting, but they gave us, I think they gave us uniforms there, I'm not sure. We spent an awful lot of time waiting around, eating, freezing to death, because they put us in these old prisoner of war huts, and they had taken the stoves out. And when it rained and when it snowed, it came in through the hole where the chimney used to be. It was very cold. They didn't have enough people there, I guess, because they let some of the guys drive the trucks with the soldiers in them, and they were terrible drivers. After that, we went for interviews on what we wanted to do and all that type of thing. And they finally put us on a train and told us we were going to San Antonio, Texas. And there were two groups. One group was going to the Army Air Force Base at Lackland, which is a suburb of San Antonio, and the other group was going to what they call Fort Sam. That was Fort Sam, Houston, which was a medical center. And those guys were going to become medics, you know, take care of wounded soldiers and that kind of stuff. Well, everybody was nervous going down there, because everybody wanted to be in the Air Force, and nobody wanted to be a medic.
Well,
Then we had to wait until we got there to find out.
why wouldn't you want to be a medic?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd rather work on airplanes and stuff like that. I was a big airplane fan. I made model airplanes, and we had an airplane demonstration at high school, and I worked on that, and etc. When we got there, they dumped us off, one bunch, and they said, "You're in the Air Force now," and everybody cheered. They're also happy to be in the Air Force. And I went through basic training at Lackland Air Force Base, which wasn't a lot of fun, actually. And then I got permanently assigned to the hospital to work as a medic, which I hated. And the reason I got sent there was that they told me that they picked me out to be a cryptographer. Do you know what a cryptographer is?
No.
Well, you read codes, and you figure out what the codes mean. And I probably have a nice soft job in Washington or something like that. I told them I didn't want to be a cryptographer. I wanted to work on airplanes. I said, well, okay, we'll try to fit you in there. They called me in again and asked me if I wanted to be a weather observer. And I told them, no, I wanted to work on airplanes. So they sent me back to the barracks again, And I waited and waited. And they finally called me in and said, look, you gotta do something, and we don't need aircraft mechanics. So here's a list of the jobs that you can have, you can pick one. And being an engineering type, in the meantime, I'd gone to college for 2 weeks at Tufts, because I wanted to get started, I wanted to get admitted and started and all that, so when I came back, I wouldn't have to apply and all that all over again. And I couldn't decide whether I wanted to be a doctor or a dentist or an engineer. And Tufts had all three, so I could go there, in my freshman year, I could decide what I wanted to do. So, the one that was closest to engineering was a diesel mechanics school up in Washington, state of Washington, at Geiger Field. Kind of a nice place to go, state of Washington's nice. So I picked that, but I didn't really want to go there. Then one day they came down and told me that I'd been hanging around so long that I was going to work in the hospital right there in San Antonio, right there on the base. Well, I did, and I hated it. Can you imagine rubbing down guys' backs with alcohol rubs and stuff like that, emptying bedpans, all that interesting stuff, Well, my boss was a wax sergeant. She was from Back Bay, Boston. And she was really tough. Her name was B. Diamond, Sergeant B. Diamond. But she was very nice to me. And one day she said to me, Richard, or Private Whittle, whatever she called me, you don't like it here, right? And I said, no, I want to work on airplanes. She said, okay, I'm going to talk to the major and see if he will release you, and you can try to find yourself a spot working on airplanes. Because we have a facility down at Kelly Field, which is nearby, and if you can go down there and talk them into it, maybe they'll accept you. So I went up and I saw the major, and he said, well, we're sorry to see you go, but if it's really that important to you, you can go. We'll release you, but you'll have to go down and talk to a Major Moreau down there and see if he'll take you. So I went down there. I was all nervous, of course, and I was so excited. Hear all these airplanes and people working on them, and planes coming in and taking off, and people running engines and stuff, and I thought, oh man, this is heaven, if I can only do this. So Major Moreau was a very nice guy. He told me that they needed people like me because I was interested in the work. A lot of people, they said, they're just soldiers. They don't really care what they do. He had a very tough top sergeant assisting him who insisted that we don't need any more people here. And they got into an argument, and the major told the sergeant that I'm running this squadron, you aren't. We're going to accept this person. So, one day a Jeep showed up at the medical place and they said, grab your junk, big bag full of stuff, hop in the Jeep, and the guys in the barracks were all mad because they all wanted to get out of there. And they were really sore. I never went back there to see them because they were furious. So, I was in the service for 18 months. At that time you could enlist for 18 months. Not too many people know that. And I worked on planes, and it was wonderful. And I worked the early shift, and I could eat whatever I wanted. Bowls of strawberries and cream, I could whatever I wanted. I had 2 airplanes. I used to run them up in the morning, check them out. And if they were okay, I signed them off for flight. If they weren't, I put a big X on that thing, and we had to work on them and fix them. So after that, when the 18 months was up, I got on another train, civilian train this time, because once you're discharged, you can't use military flights. I tried to get a ride on Air Force plane. He said, no, you're a civilian, no, we can't do that for civilians. So, took the train back, and there I was, back at home. Does that answer your question?
Yeah,
All my travels, how it worked? Okay.
Yeah. Wait, so what was a typical day like you being in the Air Force?
It was a fascinating day because I had a wonderful guy that I worked for, a crew chief, and the guy in charge of all the crew chiefs, Sergeant Steele, was a wonderful guy. He was a big Texan guy, and he was very fair, very good. In the morning, my crew chief didn't really want to run these planes up to top speed. He was nervous about it. So he taught me how to do it, and he said, "Will you do this?" I said, "Sure." Okay, why not? So they put me on the early shift. So I was awakened early in the morning, like 6 o'clock or 5 o'clock, I don't know what time it was. And I went over to the mess hall, and I could eat anything I wanted to. I used to cram my pockets of my jackets full of hermits, because I loved hermits. And at the right time, I would go out. I would check these planes over, pre-flight them. There are a whole bunch of things you have to check, you have to do. And then you get inside the plane, you start the engine, the big Whittle engine plane, AT-6. I had 2 planes, I'd run them up, check them out. And they had like a clipboard, that fit in a little thing inside the plane. And you went out all these things to check. If the plane checked out okay, you signed it off as okay for flight. If there was a problem somewhere, then you put a big red X on it. So if the operations office did not get the message somehow that the plane wasn't suitable to fly, the pilot would get in it and he'd pull this thing out and he'd see this big red X on it. This means don't fly this plane, it's not airworthy, And when that was done, I was essentially through until pilots came out. They'd get in the plane and they'd get in and check it out themselves. And they'd take off and fly around. In the meantime, we set up a volleyball court, and we'd spend practically all morning playing volleyball.
Oh, that's awesome.
Which was great. Yeah, awesome, right. If the plane came back, we'd have to, park it. You tell them how to park it. We had signals, hand signals we used. And then it would be noontime. We had to take short courses. We have to go in the hangar every so often and read these technical manuals about the planes. And we had to sign off that we had read these things.
Why did you have to read them?
Well, because you were supposed to know what you were doing. Now, all of these mechanics had gone to mechanic school, but I'd never gone to school for it. So I just started cold. So we had to read all this stuff. And noontime we had lunch. In the afternoon, the pilots would come out again. They'd fly around in the afternoon. And then we have supper. We're free to do what we want to do. We had a day room with 2 great pool tables in it. I used to play pool. I loved to play pool. And I'll tell you, that was a good life while it lasted. The problem was that at the very end, before I left, things started to change, and we didn't understand why. They put chain link fences all around the planes with the guard gate. We used to just walk out the door to the plane, No. You had to go down the street to the guard gate and all that stuff. And they started to turn in the older planes for the new planes, A-26s, P-51s, planes like that. And we had to give up our collection of old World War II type planes. We had all Thunderbolts and twin Beechcraft planes. We kept our DC-3s. We traded in our B-25s for A-26s. This doesn't mean anything to you, but it'll probably mean to some of these people. And also, we used to have Saturdays and Sundays off.
Oh, wow.
Unless you worked the weekend or nights. Well, sometimes I worked nights. We didn't understand why, but Saturday mornings we had inspections. We had to get all spit and polish shined up. We had to do drill, and then they started telling people that they couldn't leave. In other words, if your enlistment was up, they would say, "Well, you have to stay now. You can't leave. You can't get discharged," which was pretty scary. Because some people wanted to get out of the service, of course, like me. So in the morning, we'd go out and there'd be a list on the day board. And I always ran out there and looked. I was lucky. I did not get held back. Because I wanted to go back to college the next fall, you know, and I did not want to get held up any longer. So basically, that's the story.
Well, wait, why did they, like, add different planes and stuff?
Well, they were getting ready for the Korean War.
Oh.
Now, everybody thought this was 1948, okay? The Korean War started in 1950, two years later. Everybody thought, we're through World War II, now we're going to have peace, you know? And we couldn't understand why they were making all these changes. You know, like they were getting ready for another conflict. That didn't dawn on me until years later why that was happening, really. We also stored a lot of planes from World War II, B-29s, we had a whole bunch of B-29s all along the edge of the field.
What kind of planes are those?
Those were 4-engine bombers that they were going to use to bomb Japan with. And when the war ended, there were all these nice new bombers, and I guess instead of busting them up, they decided to set some aside. And then they kept planes like the P-51 and the A-26, which are modern planes, and they got rid of the older planes, except for planes like the C-47s and the AT-6s. C-47s were DC-3s. Do you know what a DC-3 is?
Nope.
Oh, everybody knows what DC-3 is. It's been around forever. The plane that Douglas built in the 1940s, and it was extremely successful. And it was like one of the first real airliners. The AT-6 trainer that I worked on was used in the Korean War too, as was the A-26, which we had, and of course the C-47 or the DC-3, as you might hear about it later. And they were getting ready for something, and we couldn't figure out why, because the war was over as far as we were concerned, you know. And there were a lot of guys that I worked with who were real war veterans. They'd been in through the whole thing, you know, mostly in the Pacific. I don't know how much to tell you. In the World War II, they had what they call theaters of operation. ETO was the European Theater of Operation, and there was the CBI Theater, which was the China, Burma, India Theater. And of course there was the Pacific Theater, that was huge. Yeah. And so guys would talk about being, well, I was in ETO, or I was in the Pacific, or I was in CBI. Sounds like Chatham, right? CBI? So that was the kind of language that they used, you know, when they talked. And we had one guy who'd been in the Bataan Death March. I don't know if you ever heard of that or not.
Not that much.
Do you want to hear about it?
Yeah,
oh,
sure.
Okay. When the war started in the Pacific, things went really badly for the U.S. And the Japanese were advancing, you know, island by island. And they were going to take over the Philippines. And when they did, a lot of American and Filipino troops were left behind because they couldn't get them out of there. And then the Japanese were extremely cruel to them. And they marched them a long ways from one place in the Philippines to another place in the Philippines. And they call it the Death March because so many of them died. And they were purposely cruel to them. And, you know, like the Filipino women would put out pans of water because the guys didn't have anything to drink, and the Japanese soldiers would kick them over, you know, that kind of stuff. And if you fell behind, they just shot you, you know. It was really bad. And we had one guy in our squadron who was a survivor of that. And he was a walking zombie. I don't know whether he was on medication or what.
What do you mean he looked like a zombie?
He never said much. You asked him a question, he got a funny answer. And he didn't do much. He was very, very lethargic. he just sat around most of the time. You know, he didn't play volleyball, for example. You know, he was just a burned out guy. What else you want to hear?
Well, I just want to double check the time. Okay. So did you ever fly a plane?
No, I went for a ride in an AT-6 once, and the guy did aerobatics, and I got really sick. So I didn't go flying anymore with those guys, with those fighter pilots, because they was real show-offs, you know, they're always doing stuff like that. I came home for Christmas in 1947, Christmas 1947, and there was a C-47 going up to Boston, and that plane always filled up. But I knew the guy who made up the manifests. He was the chief operations guy, I guess. He was a sergeant. And he told me that my chances were getting very slim about getting that trip to Boston because everybody wanted to go on it, and that included, you know, officers, colonels, and all people like that. But he said, we normally don't have an assistant crew chief on the C-47, but I'll make you assistant crew chief, and that means that you will get the ride up and back. No one can bump you off. So it pays to have friends. So we flew up to Boston, and there was a big storm. We had to stop at Pennsylvania, if I forget where it was, and wait for the storm to go. Then we flew up to Mitchell Field, Long Island, and wait for the storm to go. And then we flew up to Logan Airport, up in Boston. And then I forget how I got home. I took the train bus, I guess. And I spent Christmas at home with my folks and friends. And then a couple of days later, we went back to Logan Airport, and the plane was covered with ice. And we had to get the ice off the plane. And we had brooms, we kept whacking at it until the ice all fell off. One guy punched a hole in the aileron through the fabric, so we had to patch that up. We flew back with the plane patched up. And it was a strange feeling, because I hadn't traveled much, and to go from icy Boston to sunny San Antonio was quite a pleasant surprise. And then 3 months later, I got discharged, and I had to come back on the train, like I mentioned before. And that was an interesting experience. So I was assistant crew chief. I didn't have much to do, but I was secure in knowing I could go up there and go back. And DC-3 is a good plane, C-47. I, of course, listened to the engines all the way, and they didn't miss a skip a beat. So I didn't do much flying in the military airplanes, but I had, my best friend was learning to fly, excuse me, and he used to fly Piper Cubs. So we used to go out and go flying a lot. I'd chip in a few bucks. In those days, the FAA didn't have all these rules that they have now. And we'd fly. And then I had another friend, he was a Mexican guy. He took me out flying once. I went with him. And there was a sergeant that was flying with me. He used to take me when he went flying. He flew sightseeing tours in this ancient Stinson plane. And he was a lot of fun, that guy. So I used to wait for him to come back when he took these passengers out for rides. And that's about it. Unfortunately, my friend, I guess I had a real close shave. My friend Smitty was going flying one afternoon in a BT-13, which was a surplus Air Force or military trainer. And I couldn't go. I still love to go with him flying. You know, he used to let me fly the plane, and lots of fun. And but he crashed and he was killed.
Oh wow.
And fortunately, I could not go that day, so I was lucky. That's about it for my flying. experience until I became a private pilot, here when I was in my 50s. So that was about it. You don't want to hear about that,
I don't.
because that's not part of the military stuff. Yeah.
Wait, so what else did you do like after you got out of the Air Force?
What did I do? Well, I got out on March the 31st, 1948. And what I did was, I was going to study engineering at Tufts. I decided I wanted to be an engineer. I learned in the Air Force I didn't want to be a doctor or a dentist. I wanted to be an engineer, because I really liked that airplane stuff. And I wanted to get a job as an aeronautical engineer, possibly later. Although Tufts did not have an aeronautical engineering course. So I went to their academy to brush up on my math and stuff. And that was a lot of fun too. There were a lot of fun kids there. After that, what did I do? Oh, I went back to Weymouth High School too. That was a lot of fun because they were returning veterans doing the same thing. And we had the run of the school, of course. We weren't like, juniors or seniors or anything. We were returning veterans. So I took courses that I thought would help me at Tufts. And that was basically what I did. Then I went back to Tufts in the fall of 1948 for 4 years. Then I got a job with Hamilton Standard Company in Connecticut, and they make airplane propellers and all that kind of stuff. So that was a lot of fun too. So, if you work hard enough, you get where you want to go. That's all I can say, really. You have to have a dream and you have to pursue it. So, like living on Cape Cod, What else is on your list of questions?
What was one of the toughest days you experienced?
Toughest days? Well, basic training is not any fun. And it was funny. It was a drastic difference between basic training and all that, and then when you get to be what's called permanent party. You finally have a job and you someplace where you work, and that was really a dream compared to basic training. Basic training, they have to wake up at 4:30 in the morning and tell you that you have KP that day, and KP means that you have to get up at that hour, 3:30, 4:30, and you wash dishes and set tables and peel bananas and wipe off ketchup bottles, and you do all kinds of fascinating things. And then of course you have to go out in the field, and they do nice things to you, like get you up in the middle of the night, and you have to march along this road, a dirt road, it was called bivouac, I guess. And then you have a gas mask that you have to learn to use. And suddenly they drive a Jeep by and they squirt this gas. And if you don't get that mask on or get it on right, it's not funny. And all kinds of stuff like
Wait,
that.
was it like actual gas that could kill you, or was it like?
Oh, no, of course not. But it was awful stuff, I didn't have my gas mask on really completely right the first time. And, it was awful stuff. And that's not fun, It's an interesting experience. I kind of like the firing range where you learn to fire all kinds of guns.
Oh wow.
Oh yeah, you had, rifles, handguns like 45. I really love the 45 caliber pistols, bang bang, big pistols. And submachine guns. That didn't last long. We learned to use a submachine gun called a grease gun, and it was a cheap little sheet metal thing, but it shot, And I remember shooting it, the thing went right up in the air like this, You have to learn to hold it down. And, and you have lots of courses, which everybody's fell asleep in. like 2 a day. You'd go to these little buildings, you'd all sit there and you'd learn all kinds of stuff. You know, like how to take care of yourself, what to do if you don't have enough to eat, what to do for first aid, what to do for this or that, and that was fun. Which reminds me, when I worked at Hamilton Standard, I'll try to make this short, I worked on a program that would have required flying up at high altitudes. So I went up to Westover Field, which is in Chicopee, Mass, I believe, near Springfield, and you go up in this chamber, and they reduce the pressure. Oh, you have an oxygen mask, and they reduce the pressure, like you're going up 10,000 feet, 20,000 feet, out to like 30,000 feet. And then they have one of the people take his mask off and try to write something like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and he writes in he just conks out, you know. So you see what happens when you don't take care of yourself up there. And we had to quit early because some general or something got such gas pains in his stomach that he couldn't stand it. So we had to cut the test short. Pretty embarrassing, huh? So anyway, there's all kinds of interesting things compared to this life.
Was it hard going from the Air Force to like normal life?
No, not at all. When I was in the service, in September of 1947, the Army Air Force became the U.S. Air Force. And that meant that we were going to have to change our uniforms to the blue that they wear now, and black shoes instead of brown shoes. And I hated that outfit. You know, I said, geez, I'm going to look like a mailman when I put this thing on. So I did not have to do it. You know, in 1948 we still had the old uniforms, but it was going to be different. And instead of sleeping in a great big barracks with a lot of guys, we were going to have rooms with 2 people in there. No, they were going to change everything. You know, they were really spoiling it as far as I was concerned. Oh, and then they had the Air Force Academy, of course. At that point, had to do that. And I don't know, but basic training had a lot of PT called physical training. And you go out, and Texas, of course, is flat in all these fields. You go out to a field, and we'd be doing push-ups and all that stuff. And I did not mind that. I kind of liked that. But I do remember one thing we had to do. We had an obstacle course. You had to run around this obstacle course. And one of the things in that obstacle course was a wall. It was just a wall. And you had to get over that wall. And it wasn't easy. And some guys were too fat and they couldn't get over that wall. And they tried so hard. They would run into it, they'd crash into it. They couldn't get up. They couldn't, convert forward motion to up motion to grab the top of it. And those poor guys. They finally tell them to go around it. Just because they couldn't do it. We had to climb rope ladders. And, to be heavy was really tough, But I was 18 years old. I mean, that didn't bother me at all. So, well, I could talk forever. Anything else you want to know about?
No, I think that's enough. Wow.
You had a lot of questions there.
Yeah.
When's that? The next time?
Well, I think that's good. We have over 30 minutes. So.
Really?
Yeah.
Now, Rick said that I wouldn't say much, didn't he? I never told Rick all this stuff. I never told anybody, because no one asked me. They don't care anyway, really. I hope that this is interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm not shooting anybody or parachuting out of planes or anything like that, It was very, except for basic training, it was a very sane experience. For the most part, the guys stuck together, they helped each other, Band of brothers. Am I still on?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So thank you for.
Oh,
Thank
well,
you.
sometimes I don't mind talking, I guess. Huh? Now, are you going to edit this and take out when I ask you questions and stuff, or do you just?
No, I'm not allowed to edit it.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So I'm gonna turn this off now. Okay.
What's
so
that?
I'm gonna turn it off now. Okay.
Okay.
So thank you.
You're welcome.